Prayers from the Bikini Sea. Art by Atsuhiko Morimoto. Text by the Bikini Kamishibai Picture Story Show group. Translation and narration by Mac B. Gill. On August 6th and 9th, 1945, the world's first nuclear bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The cities were destroyed in an instant, and countless lives were taken. Afterwards, many more people died because of the effects of radiation, and even now it remains a source of anxiety for many people. The radiation from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant disaster on March 11, 2011, caused by the Great East Japan earthquake, also resulted in many people having to abandon the places they'd lived for their whole lives. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and Fukushima display the realities of radiation exposure, but there is actually another incident that happened out in the beautiful ocean that should not be forgotten. This Kamishibai tells that story. This ship is the Daigo Fukuryu Maru. On March 1, 1954, the U.S. conducted a hydrogen bomb test on Bikini Atoll in the Pacific Ocean's Marshall Islands, and this tuna fishing boat was covered in the ashes of death. The boat is now on display at the Daigo Fukuryu Maru Exhibition Hall on Tokyo's Yume-no-shima Island, together with a prayer for peace, so that the atrocities of the atomic and hydrogen bombs will never be repeated. Oishi Matashichi, who was aboard the Daigo Fukuryu Maru at the time, describes what it was like to be exposed to a hydrogen bomb test as follows. On the advent of the nuclear age, an atomic explosion, sizzling like a bolt of lightning, struck the quiet sea. I was lying in bed, staring blankly out into the dark after a long night of fishing that had started at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's when the light came. It enveloped the sky, the sea, and the boat in a bright yellow color. At the time, the Daigo Fukuryu Maru was 160 kilometers away from Bikini Atoll. There was the sound of an explosion and a huge fireball, and then white ash rained down from the sky. The ship hurried to escape, but it still took over 5 hours, during which the white ash continued to fall. The white ash, the ashes of death, was made up of radioactive particles. The 23 people aboard the Daigo Fukuryu Maru ranged from age 18 to 39, with the average being 25 years old. While traveling full speed towards their home port, everyone's throats began to hurt, and some began feeling nauseous. Skin that was touched by the ashes of death turned red and blistered, and hair began to fall out. They returned to their home port of Yaizu in Shizuoka Prefecture on the 14th, and, upon examination, were all diagnosed with radiation sickness. All of the tuna they had caught was thrown away. Half a year later, it was announced over the radio that Kuboyama Aikichi, chief wireless officer, had died of acute radiation syndrome. That event is now called the Bikini Incident, or the Daigo Fukuryu Maru Incident. Suzu, Kuboyama's wife, said this in appeal. Ladies and gentlemen, can we allow humans to use weapons to kill other humans? On his deathbed, my husband repeatedly cried out, "I can't allow such a horrible thing to continue. It must be eliminated at all costs." The Daigo Fukuryu Maru incident triggered a nationwide movement to eliminate atomic and hydrogen bombs in Japan. Then, in the August of 1955, the first World Conference against atomic and hydrogen bombs was held in Hiroshima. In the 16 years following 1954, America conducted over 100 atomic and hydrogen bomb tests. 6 such tests were conducted during the 2.5 months following March 1st, including the hydrogen bomb test that struck the Daigo Fukuryu Maru. It was 3,220 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Additionally, the Daigo Fukuryu Maru wasn't the only one affected by the Bikini incident's ashes of death. In total, 1,000 ships were affected. However, 7 months after the Bikini incident, the investigations into the affected fishing boats ended. Records of the crew's exposure to the atomic bombing were hidden, and the fact that other ships besides the Daigo Fukuryu Maru were affected was covered up. The opportunity to talk about the facts of radiation exposure was lost, and the Bikini incident was forgotten. After that, nuclear power plants were built all over Japan for the peaceful use of nuclear energy. A group called the Hata High School Seminar was formed in Kochi Prefecture in the summer of 1983, 29 years after the Bikini incident. The high school students, who grew up in places like a mountain village bordering the Shimanto River or a fishing village on the Kuroshio Current, spoke with the people around them and dug up the history of the region to look at peace and youth from the ground up. To do that, they conducted a survey on the bomb victims in 1985, the 40th anniversary of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings. It was then that they learned about Fuji Setsuya. Mr. Fuji committed suicide by drowning at the age of 27 after suffering from illness caused by both the atomic bombing in Nagasaki and the Bikini hydrogen bomb test. The students continued their investigation to find out what exactly drove Mr. Setsuya Fuji to his death. They also learned that all 14 villages in the Hata region had residents who'd been affected by the Bikini incident. They even conducted the survey in Muroto, on the opposite side of the prefecture. Some people didn't want to talk about the Bikini incident. The students were persistent in their visits, and people began to talk about what they had experienced, saying things like, "I don't want to think that I've been exposed to radiation, but my old friends are falling apart one by one. I'm not even sure I have a proper body anymore." The Bikini incident is still affecting the present. It's not a thing of the past, the high school students said as they spread their research findings across the country. They discovered that more than 1,000 ships, including the Daigo Fukuryu Maru, had been damaged in the disaster, and that all the sailors were suffering from radiation sickness. In Tsukumo City's Naigai no Ura district, where Fuji Setsuya lived, were 7 other sailors who'd been on a tuna fishing boat called the Shinsei Maru. They had also been fishing in the area around Bikini Atoll at the time of the incident. They washed away the ash that had piled high on the bridge and mast of the boat and arrived in Tokyo on March 23rd. Upon undergoing inspection for radiation contamination at Tsukiji, their catch was dumped into the ocean. In the years following, Yoshimura Yoshimi died of a brain tumor at age 45, and Matsumura Masayoshi died of esophageal cancer at age 61. Inoue Fumio died of stomach cancer at 52, Yoshimura Isao died of liver cancer at 58, Okamoto Kiyoshi died suddenly at age 73 of a ruptured blood vessel, and, including the deaths of Yamashita Yukio and Iota Nobuo, all 7 fishermen ended up losing their lives. Inoue Umeharu, born and raised in Tsukumo City, was navigator first class aboard Muroto City's Daigo Kaifuku Maru. Because they were unaware of the hydrogen bomb tests, he was subjected to 2 of them, on March 1st and again on the 27th. When fishing began, even Mr. Inoue, an engineer, would sacrifice his sleep to help bring in the tuna. The seawater bath, heated by the engine, was a perfect place to relax after a hard day's work. When it rained or squalled, everyone would get naked and wash their bodies instead of showering. They also used accumulated rainwater to wash their clothes. The fishermen often ate the organs from the tuna they caught along with their meals. They didn't know that the rain, seawater, and fish were all contaminated with radiation. The Daigo Kaifukumaru docked in Tokyo on April 7th. The radioactivity of the crew members, boat, and tuna was measured, and the results were unbelievably high. Most of the fish that the crew had laboriously caught were dumped into the ocean. Strange things began happening to Mr. Inoue's previously healthy body as well. He died in 2013 after suffering from leukemia and lymphoma. Yokemoto Komatsu from Kuroshio Town was aboard Cape Muroto's Daigo Mega Maru that was fishing east of Bikini Atoll in March and returned to Tokyo on April 25th. At Tsukiji, their ship was boarded by 3 or 4 people wearing coats. The testing machine crackled aggressively over them and the yellowfin tuna, albacore tuna, and the other fish they had caught. Among the ships that had returned to Tokyo, they had the 4th largest catch, all of which was thrown away. 10 years later, Yokemoto quit fishing. He had various health issues such as hernias, stomach ulcers, and heart disease. He wasn't worried about it, but as the people who'd been aboard the boat with him in 1954 began dying of cancer, he became concerned. In 2014, when he was having his teeth examined at Hiroshima University, it was discovered that he had been exposed to 319 millisieverts of radiation, the same as atomic bomb victims who were 1.6 kilometers away from the center of the explosions. Kuwano Yutaka was also fishing for tuna near the Marshall Islands, aboard the Daini Kosei Maru. Dark ash fell like snow for 2 or 3 days following March 1st. Even though they washed the deck every morning, there were places where the ash would pile up over 2 centimeters high. They returned to Uraga on April 15th, and they heard a loud crackling sound when they held a radiation detector over the fish. However, Mr. Kuwano himself was not tested, so he thought he was fine. After turning 40, many of his friends who had also been aboard the Kosei Maru began dying from illnesses, and he began to worry that he might be next. However, he kept it all a secret, even from his wife. He was afraid that if he told the truth, he would lose his job. In Fukushima, there seems to be health problems caused by the nuclear accident, but I want us to be the last ones to have to hide our exposure, he said. Shimomoto Setsuko only learned that her father was a victim of the Bikini hydrogen bomb test after he died. As a child, Setsuko was afraid of her father and disliked him because he was incredibly short-tempered. However, she came to understand that he was angry about his inability to tell anyone about his radiation exposure, and that everyone pretended that the incident had never happened. Setsuko told us the following story. At the time of the hydrogen bomb test at Bikini, my father was 31, and I was 3. He was a radio operator, but he quit at age 37. He didn't tell his children, but he had a variety of ailments, including high blood pressure, diabetes, and meningitis. He wore a wool haramaki for warmth, even in the middle of summer. He was prepared for his death even as he had surgery for his stomach cancer. Most of the others from the boat died in their 60s, he said. She didn't want her father's death to be in vain, so she began working towards the elimination of nuclear weapons. The Marshall Islands are in the Central Pacific, about 4,800 kilometers southeast of Japan. It's an ocean nation comprised of 29 atolls and 5 islands. The beautiful atolls and small islands, with their clear waters, have been called the Pearl of the Pacific. The people of the Marshall Islands have made their homes on the islands surrounding the atolls and move freely between them. The Bikini hydrogen bomb test was conducted in a place where 14,000 people lived. The 1954 hydrogen bomb test directly exposed over 600 people living on the Marshall Islands to radiation. It is now known that 550 Japanese fishing boats, and 1,000 boats in total, had to dump contaminated fish, and 10,000 fishermen were exposed to radiation. These people were all victims of the nuclear weapon development process. The United States, Russia, and other countries that have developed nuclear weapons have conducted over 500 above-ground nuclear tests and 1,500 underground nuclear tests, and as a result, there are victims of nuclear weapons worldwide. Serious environmental damage is also an issue. There are currently 13,000 nuclear weapons on Earth. The people of the Marshall Islands, who have always lived in close contact with the sea, and the fishermen who fish for tuna in those rich waters, had their lives ruined by the nuclear tests. After investigating the Bikini incident, the Hata Seminar High School students wrote a song called Peace on the Kuroshio Current, believing that peace is the key to protecting the rich ocean. We have been living all together with the vibrant, beloved Kuroshio. We pray for peace for all our futures. While there's nuclear weapons in the world, humanity's pain and sadness will never ever cease. So then, like the sea that binds us all as one, with everyone's strength, we can connect the world. The activities of the Hata High School seminar are being passed on to a new generation. They are working to tell the world about the events that took place within their community. Like that beloved Kuroshio, full of life, flowing onwards, we believe in peace for all our futures. While we are surrounded by that awful hellfire, humanity's pain and sadness will never ever cease. So then, like the waves that bind us all as one, with everyone's strength, we can connect the world.
何が何でも第五福竜丸以外は受け付けないというのが政府の姿勢じゃないかと、そうとしか私は思えないです。血毒に全然私のような病気をした者はいないわけですよ。裁判でも被災してることは認めると、認められてるんです。プロフィールからちょっと話したいと思います。外地生まれの終戦の引き上げなんですよ。プサン生まれなんです。プサンでね、親父はやはり船関係の。それで終戦と同時に家族 みんな乗って帰ろうということで。
いや、松本さんその時何歳や
？9歳。
9歳。
家族構成がね、兄弟4人です。姉、兄貴、私、妹。倉庫が一軒があるから、それで親父がこっちこっちこっちこっちその小屋を壊して、で一応家の形ができた。
で場所はどこですか？
宇佐です。
宇佐。
戸田島宇佐です。
なるほど。
木こりからまず始めた親父が。それでなんとか金繰りしたんでしょう。小さな船を購入して、12歳の時ですよね。機械をしっかり仕込まれてね、エンジンは兄貴の担当やった。親父に叱られながら親子でその薪を積んで三馬へ行ったり浦戸へ行ったり高知まで運んだり、それから漁船に切り替えた。で漁船で土佐清水でメジカを釣りに、それこそオンボロ船でね、今思ったらゾッとするような。
わかります。
今と違う
みんな周りの人がね、草から来てる親子連れがということで評判になってました。
お父さんと
3人です。兄貴と。
男3人でいかがですか？その時松本さんは何歳
？15歳ぐらいですか。卒業証書は友達がもらってきてくれてました。ほとんどね、学校はあんまり行ってません。で私もこんなことをしててもいかんなというので、当時命が欲しいものは来るなと、金が欲しければ来いというのが室戸の漁船やったんですよね。マグロ船へ乗ったのが17歳の時です。だから1航海目がね、27日で、これ東沖いうて野島の沖でね、ビンチョウマグロとメバチマグロを目標に行ったんですけど、それでその次からビキニの方へ大体。その自分がね、麺の軍手しかなかったんです。それも先輩が「こいつお前クソ生意気に仕事もできんくせに手袋なんかやっていてバチーンとそんなんですよ。結局みんなが協力して釣り上げて、その漁獲を船主が何割取って経費を引いて何割取って船員にあと船員で分けると。それだけハードな仕事をしよるのに1年飯ですよ。おかげなしです。
船で？
そうよ。やっと飯食う周りが来たと思って行ったら、大事家で棚から落ちてご飯が落ちとったら、それ拾って食うしかないやないですか。サメの食い残し、そんなのの食い残したところは切り取って捨てて、残ったところを食べる。
とか内臓とか。
まあ帰りもものすごいしけを表面から大波を受けて、宇佐でも私の同級生が遭難してマグロ船で全員死亡です。
ビキニに行ってこの被爆これにあったのは姫丸ですよね。
そうです。
姫丸で何回か行ったんですか？
そう。だけどビキニの方は値段は漁獲はちょっと下がるけど、値段は下がるけど確実に釣れるというメリットがあったんです。それで土佐の漁師があそこは開拓したと。
それは聞きました。
ご飯食べるテーブルとか椅子は一切ありませんからね。 風呂はなくデッキにて海水で体を洗うスコールが来ればシャワーとして浴びる。洗顔歯磨きもすべて海水、洗濯海水スコールで洗う。大便は線尾、一番の線尾で囲いなし。
トイレはそのまま海へこう行くんですか？
そうそうそう。天候の悪い時はトイレへ行くのも命がけ。
そらそうや。
命がけですよ。寝床、私たち機械員は幅60センチ、スペースは板で区切って、ローリングするから区切りがなかったら
はいはいはい。板でこう
ね、
動かんようにしとる。あ、なるほどね。
板で区切って、まあこれが大体生活。
やっぱりそうしたらすごい
見たらわかり
ます。
想像つきます。
つきます。
ね、これこういう目線とわからんです。
わからんね。それは
やっぱり
わからん。
そしたらスコールが来たら嬉しかったですか？体洗えるの。
嬉しかったですよ。
ね
しかし今にして考えたらもう汚染水ですよね。
そうですよね。
しぶきも汚染水。全部食べる魚も汚染されてる。衣類も汚染されてる。船内全部が汚染されてる。で航海中の作業が私の場合ね、食事の準備、後片付け、当直以外は漁具の手入れ、機関の整備があれば整備。操業になると遠縄、まず餌をつけて、それが約4時間。ちょっと休憩時間があります。3時間ぐらいですかね。揚げ菜が12時間から14時間かかります。
あ、そう。
ね。
これは大変やね。
トーナ揚げ菜で1日で焼く。それを20回から25回程度。寝る暇ないですよ。それでね、量があって大物がかかるとね、もつれというかね、ハエナがもう団子になってる。それをもつれさばきをせないから、そんなことをしよったらもう盗難の時間が来るわけです。
そりゃそうや。
そしたら引き続き魚の血で汚れたまま、まあ熟睡なんか本格的に寝る状態じゃないからこれ仮眠としてるけど、ここらは魚の血がついたまま綿を抜きますからね。そんなの洗ってるより寝た方がマシやからそのまま寝る。要するに人間船員は当時はね消耗品ですよ。ただひたすら魚を追って一生懸命働いて危険なビキニ区域も知らさせずそのまま操業をしてきた人間をなお一層追い打ちをかけるような政府の仕打ち断固許されないです。15歳で乗った人もいるでしょう。みんな家庭を助けるためですよ。当時ね、早くから税金を人一倍払ってきてるんですよ。なんでこんなに仕打ちをされなきゃいかんかと。
そしたらその松本さんがその被災したっていうかビキニでそういうことがあったっていうのを知ったのは
船の上ではね、被災したことは一切知りません。
知らなかった。
それで、2014年に甲信の記事で、訴訟を起こす云々という記事を見て、それやったら証言することで、役に立つなればということで私がそれがきっかけです。
そうですか。
そのことは忘れてました。しかし私も害が当てられた記憶もあるし、
それでそうしたらそういうこともずっと思い出してきたがよね。
それで針も触れた魚も捨てに行った そういうことがあったから、何かお役に立てばということが私の動機です。
でも忘れちゃったけども、その体の具合はどうだったんですか？
だからね、思い出せばね、一時期そのビキニから帰った時、何とも言えん体のだるさがあって、もうこれはやめて帰ろうかと思ったけど、ケツを割って帰ってきたとかいう、そういうことのね、世間の風潮が嫌で、私は頑張ったと思いますよ。そのうちになんとか体調を取り戻したと。それからずっと乗り続けた。
なるほど。
それまでそんな
でも害が当てるくらい、
話題にもなかったもんね。
害が当てるくらいだったらちゃんと血液も調べて、その時にちゃんとしとかんといかんですよね。
それでね、その結果がね、全然知らされてないんですよ。
結局それが捨てられたってことだよね。
そうです。追求する意思がない。
ないないない。なんで調べるかっていうことも説明がなかった
もう私ら全然知らない。
説明は全然ないままガガガッと来て、ほんでマグロを早かって捨てろと。あ、そういう話か。
そういうことです。その程度のもん。
やっぱりその子供たちにこう今一番こうメッセージというか、それを一言。
日本が戦争に負けた当時、ね、おじいちゃんなんかは大変な思いをし、学校も十分に行けなくって、17歳の時に最も危険な職業、マグロ漁船に乗って家計を助けるために一生懸命働きました。今考えるとドッとするようなことを自分がやってきたんだな。でも一生懸命頑張ったんだと自分を褒めてやりたいと思います。後世に伝えていかなきゃいけない大きな事件ですからね。